And that's what I told you about, being around Santos's parents, especially hugging his mom. Like, there's just a sweet presence of the Lord around her and the rest of the family. Like, when you're around them, you just know, like, no, these are people who pray.
Right.
These are people who love the Lord. These are people who sacrificially give and sacrificially serve. So there's just something there. It's like, no, God's here.
Yeah.
I don't have to struggle. I don't have to work. I don't have to strive. He's going to give me what I need in the moment.
Welcome to Stories I Didn't Tell Last Sunday. I'm Doug McAllister, your host for Journey Fellowship Church. Joining me today here is Pastor Al Sharshay, who is fresh back from India.
I'm here.
So you and Pastor Hans were in India for about 10 days.
10 days.
Yeah, so I want you to take us through the journey. Now, you were there. Your purpose was to go serve Pastor Santos and Anjali in Journey, India.
Yep.
They have the main campus is in Rajahmundry. Is that right?
Gangavaram.
Oh, okay. And then they have 15 other Journey campuses, counting that one. Is that right?
Correct.
How many of them did you get to visit?
I think like 8 of them or something like that. I'd have to go back and do the look at it exactly, but it was about 8.
So you went to bring encouragement to Pastor Santos, to train some of the pastors, and also to assess where we can build the next Journey campus. So I want you to tell some stories today, Al. There's some great stories to tell. But let's start at the beginning when you were just working on the logistics.
Yeah.
I mean, we're post-pandemic, we're travel restrictions, we got all kind of new things happening.
Yeah.
What was it like planning an international trip?
Yeah. So I mean, it wasn't terribly hard, but it was a little. I'd say that it's a little confusing as far as what some of the different COVID restrictions are and aren't based upon what country you're traveling through.
Yeah.
So a lot of the information that's on the internet, some of it is recent and relevant, some of it is outdated.
Right.
So it's easy to find the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
There are a lot of scam websites out there, trying to help you to hurry through a process for e-visas and things like that. So it wasn't terribly hard, but it's definitely time consuming.
So how many countries did you actually go through? U.S., then you went to England.
Yep.
And then from England where?
So we flew, the flight there was from here to Charlotte,
which
is only like an hour and a half.
Which is like a foreign country too.
Basically, yeah, if you've ever been to the East Coast.
Sorry, Charlotte.
No. So from here to Charlotte, and then from Charlotte to London, and then from London to Chennai, India.
Okay.
And so that was all the international flights, and then leave the international airport in Chennai, which is always fun, and then walk on down a mile or two to the to where the domestic terminal is, and then hop on a domestic flight. Right. And then the domestic flight took us from Chennai to Rajahmundry, and then there in Rajahmundry is where Santos and his family met us, picked us up from. So that's kind of the nearest big city. We continue to say like Rajahmundry, but they're really an hour and a half outside of Rajahmundry.
Oh, is that right?
And then all of the churches, all of that is outside, a good couple of hours outside of that big city of Rajahmundry.
So you at New Orleans, Charlotte, London,
correct?
Rajahmundry,
London, Chennai, then Rajahmundry.
So it was 4 international airports, and then you guys had to go to a domestic airport.
Correct.
Yeah, right. And then did you take any other flights inside of India?
Just Chennai to Rajahmundry.
And then from there you were cars, trucks, buses.
Yeah.
What was your
a car
travel? Cars.
Yeah, Santos had a vehicle, and then a guy who works for him, Muslea, drove us around.
Any testing required, like you have to prove that you're negative with COVID anywhere?
You did actually we did have to go take a COVID test prior to, which wasn't all that.
In the U.S.?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But not in England or?
I didn't have to take any additional tests. We just needed to prove before 72 hours of flying that you were negative. Yeah, so you either had to have a COVID shot or you had to be test negative.
How long was the trip in hours from beginning
28
to
hours.
End? 28?
28.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a long day. That's a long day and another day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did a lot of sleeping probably, huh?
Try. I brought melatonin, but your body, everything is kind of. So it was the craziest thing because so from the flight from London, so from Charlotte to London was already nighttime, like regular nighttime.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah, it was super nice.
Kind of built-in sleep time.
So we left Charlotte. I want to say it was like 10:30 at night.
Oh, sweet.
So that worked out really well. Slept a good portion of the time to London.
Got it.
But then by the time you land in London, I think it was like 8 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we're going to fly all the way to Chennai. So that's when you're doubling up on the melatonin.
Yeah, right.
You get a good night's rest and you wake up and you realize you've only been sleeping 3 hours. Like, oh crap, I got 7 more hours of this to go. Oh,
We're not even close yet.
It's the most miserable. Yeah. So that was very hard. The whole traveling aspect of it, I think a lot of people don't take into consideration.
Yeah.
Jet lag,
right?
On the way there and especially on the way back.
Yeah, totally. So you guys were in coach, trying to sleep with no leg room and no, I just love how the seats lean back. You press the button and it goes back.
And this guy's sitting right on top of me.
It's an 1.5 inch like this. Oh, okay, that's all it goes back.
Yeah, well, it's an experience.
Yeah.
So much so that Hans and I were like, okay, we're gonna upgrade for the flight back. We're paying the difference. I don't care how much it costs. I don't know what it is.
We're gonna go to business class.
Yeah, we're not doing this again.
What was the difference?
I don't know. We didn't. So we were able to check in early enough for the flight back that we were able to move some seats around.
Ah, nice.
And the Lord was gracious to us. He answered our prayers, so we didn't have anybody sitting in between us for either flight from Chennai to London or London straight back to New Orleans.
Nice.
So we had space between us. Yeah, it was a row of 3, and nobody was in the center. Hans was on one end, I was on the other. So it worked.
Spread your wings.
And we didn't have to pay any extra money.
Oh my gosh, that's even better.
Yeah. Now the flight there, like I said, was a different story. You had somebody sitting right up on top of you.
So was it a wide body jet you were in with those 3 different
4
sections?
rows, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was big.
It's a lot of people, man.
Yeah, it was a lot of people.
A lot of noise.
Yeah. So the first culture shock came on the plane when we landed in Chennai. A lot of what we hear about India, some of it is true, some of it is a stereotype. One of the things that is true is just the garbage. I mean, it just is what it is. There's no nice way to say it.
Right.
There's a lot of waste. People aren't recycling.
People aren't. When you land.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when the plane landed, we didn't even get off the plane.
Yeah.
And I just noticed as we were walking down the aisles, like all the waste on the floor.
Yeah.
So, typically if you get done eating, they come through, hey, can you take this? And they throw it away.
Right.
I just happened to notice when we were walking out, it was like one of the first things I noticed when we landed in Chennai. I hadn't even got off the plane yet. And it just, all of the Indian people on there, they're very quick to just kind of drop stuff all over the floor, which was very like, gosh, what the heck is going on? Like, why are you throwing this stuff on the floor?
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be doing that.
Right. It's just cultural.
It was definitely a cultural thing.
Yeah.
So, traveling was a challenge because you think you're going to sleep and you don't, and you got somebody else's elbows all on top of you and everything else. So
when you finally get there and you're in India, what is your first day like? Are you guys just worn out?
Yeah, so we landed in Rajamundry at 12 o'clock or 12:30. So basically we landed in the middle of the day, had been traveling for 28 hours.
Yeah.
There is no go to sleep because you're going to mess everything up. You have to force yourself to stay awake for the remainder of the day. And Santos knew. He was a great host. He knew. He was like, hey, we're not going to the hotel. We're going to go, probably 6 or 7 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
Because he knew, like, you guys are going to crash as soon as we get there.
Right.
And then we're going to be no good for ministry tomorrow.
Right.
So when we landed, and I didn't realize this until after the fact, but when we landed in Rajamundry, his whole family came and met us at the airport, which obviously I knew that, but I didn't realize how big of a deal it was to get them all there. I didn't know they all live, an hour and a half away.
Right.
So we land at the airport in Rajamundry. You've got 2-3 carloads of people who literally meet us there. They have, prayer shawls that they kind of drape along all on us, and then they put a garland of roses and flowers.
Yeah.
And they're handing us bouquets of flowers. So I'm holding 3 bouquets of flowers. Hans is holding 3 we just got off the plane.
And you
I got my backpack on. I got, we got 28 hours of, barely holding my eyes open. I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool. But
I saw the pictures that day when y'all sent me the daily report. And I thought, man, tell me a little bit about what is the cultural reference to that.
So there's such a culture of honor there that unless you experience it, it's really hard to explain. Yeah. So I thought it was really nice that they met us at the airport. Yeah. It was very sweet. Like I said, flowers, garland, prayer shawls, the whole works. But again, I didn't realize until later, like, wow, they literally drove an hour and a half, 3 carloads of people. You know, that was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
They drove an hour and a half to come meet us at the airport, and then to just drive right back. They didn't come to lunch with us. They
just came to say welcome.
Yeah, here you are. And then we met them all the next day. When we met everybody at the church the next day, it was the same experience.
Yeah.
So literally, when we pulled into the training center and Pastor Santos's church that first day, not the first day we were on the ground, but the first day of ministry, it was prayer shawls, it was flowers, it was people lined up, probably.
Again?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that took place every church we went to.
Oh, wow.
Every church we went to. So throwing flowers out for us on the ground. And so it's like, it begins to get overwhelming.
Yeah, that would be emotionally.
You're like, oh my gosh, like this is, like this is, it's, but there's such a culture of honor
I get it. Wow.
that you just don't.
We're missing here probably so much.
Oh, we're missing it huge.
Yeah.
So by, we're probably 3 days into the trip or so, and every church we go to, we're experiencing that, and I had to ask Santos, like, hey, are we going to keep doing this at every church we go to?
Right.
Like, not only are you greeting us and putting flowers on us and a prayer shawl and welcoming us in such an honoring way, but at the end of every service, they're putting chairs out in front of the congregation, honoring us again. People want to come take pictures with us and pray over us, and we pray for them. So by the third day, I'm like, hey, are we going to do this at every church? We don't have to do this at every church. Like, we get it. You guys honor us. Yeah. We're thankful to be here. And he was like, no, Pastor, we definitely have to do it. And I said, well, Santos, the churches, these are your churches. Yeah. It's not like we're going to a different, this is your church we're going to, so can't you just tell the people we already did this?
Yeah.
And he was like, well, the people at this location are going to wonder why couldn't we show them the honor that they deserve? Like, I know they did, but we want to show them that we honor them as well. Man. So again, I was about 3 days in. I asked Santos about it. He told me, and when he told me, it made sense. I got it. And immediately, the Holy Spirit starts speaking to me. Why are you so uncomfortable with honor? Yeah. What is it within you that just doesn't appreciate, what makes you so uncomfortable about it? Right. And you kind of wrestle with that internally throughout the remainder of the trip. It isn't anything that Santos or anybody else was doing necessarily. It was just so different from what we're accustomed to here. That it got to be a little bit much. Yeah. So so that was right from the beginning. From the first day we landed all the way through, and so I told you, Santos picked us up with his family on that first day we landed. And, you're tired and whatnot, and he's got a friend of his who was just as committed to hosting us as Santos was, frankly. His name is Muslea. Amazing.
Is he in the picture with y'all?
He's in a bunch of them.
The 4 pastors that are around the pulpit?
No.
That's not him?
No.
Okay.
No. So Muslea was our driver.
I see.
And just a great guy, servant heart.
Yeah.
But Muslea, for the first 2 days now he left his wife and his children. Yeah. Just like Santos did, to drive us around for this entire time from church to church, to stay in the hotel in Rajamundry and everything else. The first 2 days that we're there, Muslea will not sit with us for coffee, for breakfast, for lunch. He would sit at a table by himself. So at first I recognized it and didn't say much of anything. We having our lunch that day after when we landed or whatnot. And I think the next meal or so later that night, I asked Santos, I was like, hey, tell him to come sit with us. Why is he sitting over there by himself? And he was like, no, he's going to sit over there. Like, it's his way of honoring you guys. I was like, I would be much more honored if he would just
I know it would.
Come sit with me, And he was like, nope, he's not for 2 days. Yeah. And he was like, Santos is trying to convince me, and I believe him. He's like, no, he's my friend. Like, we're friends. But this is his way of showing honor to me and honor to you guys. Right. So he would go get our coffee. He would go do, he would open the doors. So that's how we started everything off. But I made sure, like, by the middle of the trip, I was intentional about going to open the door for Muslea and bringing him over for photos. And, the guy, one of the security guards, he got a kick out of that. I would run up and open the door for Santos and open up Santos's door for the car.
Right.
They were like, "What's this white guy doing?" Yeah.
Were you the only white person?
Never saw another white guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have you, a normal-sized white guy, and then we have Hans, a
I don't know if I'd
giant
say
black
normal
guy.
size, but yeah.
Yeah, he's a 6'7".
Definitely the whitest of white.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, man.
Yeah.
That you guys.
We stuck out.
But they just, showed y'all so much honor. It just blows my mind that he wouldn't even eat with y'all, which would be the opposite for us. We would consider that, dishonor, that you won't eat with me. But I see that he's giving you space. He's deferring to your privacy.
Right.
I get that whole level. Some people who like privacy would probably really like that in cultural,
Yeah, so that was, it took, and Santos said, no, for 2 days, he's going to sit by himself and eat. Yeah. And after that second day, then he'll come. But, the whole time, Hans and I were very intentional. Like, where's Muslaya? Get Muslaya over here. Or we'd have lunch, and we noticed he wasn't. We were at Pastor Isaac and Bunny's house one day, and they're feeding us this very traditional Telugu meal on a big banana leaf, and it's an amazing meal.
Man, you got a picture of that?
I do, actually, yeah.
Oh, we should show that.
Yeah.
Can we show that? Yeah, maybe you should show that.
Yeah, I'll show you in a moment.
Yeah.
I'll get it pulled up. But, this amazing Telugu meal. And
what is Telugu? Is that a province or an area?
No, it's their, so it's, I guess,
cuisine?
it's like their dialect, the language, and like their,
I see.
I guess they're, like a certain dialect and a certain tribe.
So it's served on a banana leaf?
Yeah, I'll show you a photo here. I got it right here. So a lot of the meals were kind of
oh my
served on these banana leaves.
So we'll put it on the screen for everybody to see.
Yeah.
That's
So I noticed here on this day here, actually.
Yeah.
That's Muslaya sitting behind Hans.
Uh-huh.
But he was sitting by the washing machine. If you look in the very back of the photo, back of the room, there's a washing machine. He was sitting in the other room by the washing machine, eating on a plate. Yeah. And I was like, no, it's past day 2. Yeah. Come on in, buddy. You're
to
eating,
the table.
You're eating with us now.
Yeah. So what was the food? Chicken, rice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
I have
variations?
No. It was
spicy?
It was very spicy. Yeah. Yeah, very spicy but delicious. I loved it. I had no qualms or issues with any of the food.
Did you eat at the hotel a lot? Was there a restaurant there too?
We did. There was not in the hotel that we stood at. There was one across the street. We would go there for breakfast and coffee in the morning.
And breakfast. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So just in case, I'm going to make sure everybody's up to speed. Santos and Anjali are the pastors that we are in partnership with in India, and he's the church planter. And we got into a relationship with him through one of our other missionaries several years ago, who introduced us to Santos, and we just became a supporter. And that relationship just kind of blossomed to become, very intimate and close. Now he's, Santos and Anjali, and they have 2 kids. And you met Alan and
Andrew.
And Andrew. He had 2 little boys.
Yep.
Yeah, and you met Santos's parents.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and what's their name? Do you remember?
I do not.
How about
Yeah, we called them Mommy and Daddy.
There you go. See, I could get down with that. How about Anjali's family? Any connection there?
We did meet them as well.
Wow.
I do not remember. So I'm not Pastor Hans.
Yeah.
Pastor Hans.
He would know their name.
He knows everyone's names.
Yeah.
And learns all their songs. And I know the rhythms to the songs, but he learned the words.
Yeah, we showed a video of him leading worship to one of the songs at one of the campuses.
Yeah.
And what's the language? Is it Hindi?
Telugu.
Telugu. So he learned enough Telugu to lead a worship song on a Sunday morning. So you guys preached every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes twice or 3 times.
Yeah.
Man, what a busy day.
Most days it was twice.
Yeah.
More than half of them were 3. It was at least 2 or 3 times a day. I think one day we had one service we did, I think was for the baby naming ceremony.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first day the first ministry day.
So new babies in the church have like an official naming ceremony?
I guess. I'm not certain. It was for Santos's child, Andrew.
Andrew.
Yeah. So they hadn't shared, even though Andrew was a few months old, they hadn't shared his name publicly yet.
I see.
So that was the day we each preached a message, and then shared the name publicly, what the baby's name would be, and then prayed over him, prayed over the parents.
Yeah.
The whole church came out. We shared a meal together. It was a beautiful experience.
Man. Yeah. Did you guys preach at his church on Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
You did. So what was that like? Tell me about that.
Oh, it was
experience.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So Santos is very charismatic. He's a lot like us.
Yeah.
He's probably a little more charismatic than we are.
Mm-hmm.
However, his doctrine and everything. So I taught the 16 fundamentals one day, and so towards the end of the trip, we had the pastors training conference, and part of what we did during that 6-hour period was I wanted to talk about the importance of the life that we live and the doctrine that we believe, and how those things are related with one another.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I spent a little time going through the 16 fundamentals, and Santos told me after the fact, he said, Pastor, I was really worried. I didn't know. You told me you were going to teach doctrine, and we hadn't really talked about exactly what your doctrine is. And I was like, well, I was going to tell you what the correct doctrine is, and hopefully you would get online with it. He was like, I didn't know you were teaching my doctrine. That's all the things that you said are what we believe. And I was like, yeah, well, that's why the Lord's good.
Happenstance, that's good news. Because we're not changing. Yeah.
So everything was really good there as far as that was concerned. But yeah, we taught on the Sunday. Sunday service was amazing. People were healed. You know, God was moving in great and mighty ways. So,
did both of you preach, or just one of you?
No, we both preached
at every service.
Every service. Wow. So what we figured out, you know, and this is part of the beauty of the Lord and the sovereignty of God. You know, for weeks leading up, you know, we talked about preparation. Yeah. What are we going to do? What COVID test do we have to take? Getting e-visas, buying tickets, all that stuff. Well, as a preacher and a teacher, you're also trying to prepare, you know, spiritually. You're fasting and you're reading the scriptures and you're asking the Lord, what do you want your people to know? Yeah. What message am I bringing to them? And for weeks, I just struggled. Yeah. Like, I didn't know what to bring them. I had a list of things. I had one basic message, and then I had about 20-something pages of material that I planned on teaching. Yeah. But ultimately, I wasn't really solidified on any one thing. Yeah. And when we were on the plane, I just kind of confessed to Hans. I said, man, I've really been struggling. I don't know about you, but I've been struggling trying to pull together messages to teach, because Santos had said, like, okay, on this day we're going to visit 2 churches. This church needs to know about hope. This church needs to know about faith. This church needs to know, day 3, this church needs to, they're mostly unbelievers. We need a gospel message here. This church, so he kind of gave us that heads up. Yeah. But he also said, I want you guys to have liberty to speak on whatever the Lord puts on your heart. So I kind of confessed to Hans on the trip there. I was like, man, I've really been struggling to pull together the right messages. And he looked at me like, I can't even believe you're saying this. Yeah. Not because he was disappointed, but because he said he had the same struggle. Oh. He said, I've had the same lack of peace. I don't know. He said, I've got one message that I really think they need to hear. But other than that, I just don't know. And I said, well, we're going to trust the Lord. Yeah. That's what we're both, you know, fortunately, he's a seasoned man of God, and I'm almost a seasoned man of God. So it was like, I felt like we were going to be okay. Yeah. But still, it's like, we really wanted to have that stuff ironed out before we got there. Yeah. But I tell you, as soon as our feet touched the Indian soil, it was like this supernatural peace from God. Yeah. Like, we just knew that, okay, no, God is here. He's with us. He's leading us and guiding us in this whole process. Yeah. And there was no more anxiety. There was no more like, oh, what are we going to do? It was like, no, we were fully confident that God was there with us. We could just, and that's what I told you about, you know, being around Santos's parents, especially hugging his mom. Like, there's just a sweet presence of the Lord around her and the rest of the family. Like, when you're around them, you just know, like, no, these are people who pray. Right. These are people who love the Lord. These are people who sacrificially give and sacrificially serve. So there's just something there. It's like, no, God's here. Yeah. I don't have to struggle. I don't have to work. I don't have to strive. He's going to give me what I need in the moment. So we preached. I had one message that was prepared. And in the course of that message on that first day, I taught on the topic that Santos wanted me to teach on, but I had about 5 to 7 minutes of my testimony in the middle of that, and taught the main message. And then Hans had, just a fire word. It's a message he's preached a couple times in Africa, he said, and I could see why. It's just one of those, like, it'll preach here, it'll preach in Africa, it'll preach on Mars.
It's a word from God. Yeah.
It's an amazing message. Yeah. So we finished that first day of ministry, and I had taught what I planned on teaching. Hans had shared his message, and there were a few pastors who came out to the baby naming ceremony, and we were going to their church the next day. So the next morning they texted Santos and they said, "Hey, I don't know what the tall black guy is going to preach, but can he just preach that same message? The same message he preached yesterday, can he preach that at my church?
Oh, wow.
My people really need to hear that." And instead of that whole teaching that the white guy did, can he just expand on his testimony more? So Santos is like, "Hey, they want you to just share your testimony." I was like, "Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
That's easy. I could do that." He's like, "Yeah, there are a lot of women here whose husbands are in addiction.
Wow.
There are a lot of women here who are praying for their husbands to get saved."
Yeah.
And it was like every village we went to, there were so many people trapped in addiction, so many women who are literally just praying for their husbands to get saved, praying for their husbands to get set free. It was like, okay, now this is the message they need.
Yeah.
And it really was amazing to see how transferable my testimony was in India. Because oftentimes you would think like, well, no, what happens here is here, and it's like, no, the human problem, the condition of humanity is the same across the globe.
It is.
And your testimony, while some of the specifics aren't necessary, the general message of what God did in your life and what you experienced, how the grace of God changed your life, that's applicable anywhere. And so anyway, that was the message that we preached at every church all week long. So I just, everywhere we went, I shared my testimony.
So maybe God did give you the message from the whole trip.
Amen. Yeah. Hans preached the same message every church we went to, and every church we went to, people were saved. Every church we went to, people were getting filled with the Spirit. Every church we went to, people were coming up, wanting more of the presence of the Lord. So between my testimony, people were coming up wanting to be free from addictions. Between Hans's message, people were believing, because the point of his message was God does exceedingly and abundantly more. And that was, again, just a beautiful point behind his whole message. So he listed about 6 or 7 examples from the Bible of people who were praying for one thing specifically, and God did exceedingly and abundantly more. Yeah. But then after that first day that I shared my testimony, Hans was like, "Hey, Pastor Al, I think that I want to, you're going to be the cherry on the top of this sermon. Yeah. So I'd share my testimony first, and then he would preach. And after, when he would get to the end of preaching, he would, you feel like he's wrapping it up, and he's like, "I got one more example. I've told you stories from the Bible about how God did exceedingly and abundantly more, but we have one right here." And he said, Pastor Jen prayed for her husband to get saved. Pastor Jen prayed for her husband to get set free from addiction. Prayed for, and look at him now. He's traveling the world preaching the gospel. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was just so good. Yeah, it was such a such a sovereign move of God. Oh my gosh, it was so perfect. Yeah. So it was one of those things where I was like, you don't have to write anything. Yeah. Every church we went to, some of the villages were small. Most of them were small. Yeah. Some of them were in the city. Some of them were very isolated. But the reality was, the Spirit of God was leading us, guiding us, and with us the entire time. It was beautiful. You couldn't script it. I would love for you to tell a couple of stories, if you would. One, I want you to tell us how Santos acquired the land that we bought to build the next church on, and the miracle of the guy getting healed out of a wheelchair. Yeah. That's just a New Testament story. Would you tell the story? Yeah. So much of the trip was a New Testament experience, and it sounds contrived. It sounds maybe a little hokey to some. I don't know. Yeah. But really and truly, like, we were in day 1 or 2, and Hans and I were like, we couldn't believe what we were experiencing. We were like, this is, when the Holy Spirit, you read the verse yesterday, when the Holy Spirit said, "Set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work of the ministry." Yeah. Hans and I discussed that very passage when we were in India as like, no, the Lord has set us apart for this. This is what we're here for right now. So it wasn't about having anything scripted and all well planned. It was like, no, we're just listening to the Lord. And he spoke. He was showing me so many things, Pastor. Wow. I'm talking about like literal visions. Yeah. Like stuff I don't typically experience here. You know, we would just be praying, and I'd see a picture and I'd see an image of something, and somebody would come forward for prayer, and I would say, hey, I don't know what this means, but this is what I see when I pray for you.
Yeah.
And Santos would translate, and people would break down and start crying.
It's the power of the Holy Spirit, and it's the gifts of the Spirit too. You know, words of wisdom.
So it really was.
Yeah.
You know, the Book of Acts type stuff that we were experiencing.
Yeah.
So, you know, Santos, on one of those days, some of those days we're in the inner cities, and we're surrounded by radical Hindu extremists, and you're preaching in churches that have been burnt down one or two times previously.
Wow.
And you're being told, like, hey, we can't preach loudly. You can't elevate your voice because there's no walls.
Yeah.
And it's going to carry. And we want the church to hear from you guys, but at the same time, we don't want to draw too much attention to ourselves.
Put them in danger. Right.
Yeah, so there are 20 people here who believe that God sent you to encourage them, but at the same time, we don't want to burn this place down again.
Yeah.
So some days you're moving from that, and then the next day you're parking the car and you're walking 30 minutes through the jungle to get to this little bush village of 13 families.
Yeah. I saw the picture you showed me of the family, that the houses are literally like thatch hut roofs, you know, with no flooring. It's just, you know, jungle.
Book of Acts type stuff. So one of the villages.
So there's 13 families in that one village?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us that a little bit about
So
that.
there were. That one of those villages, I was the only white guy they had ever seen.
Yeah.
They never saw another white guy before. And most people here would say, I've never seen a white guy as white as you before. So I get it. Like, if you see my legs, you're like, oh my gosh. That is,
what does Luis call you?
He calls me leche.
Yeah, which is milk.
Milk.
Right? He calls you leche. Thanks, Luis.
Yeah, so you know, some of those, I never even imagined that I would be traveling to a village that had never seen a white guy before.
Yeah.
One of the villages had seen I was the second white person they had ever saw. The first was Alan.
Yeah.
So they saw Alan a few years ago, and then they saw me.
Wow.
So, you know, I just say those two experiences because I'm trying to draw a dichotomy between being in the inner city.
Yeah.
While it's a city, you're still surrounded by radical Hindus who have literally burned this pastor's church down twice before.
Yeah.
And we're encouraging 20 people. And then the next day we're traveling, you know, 3 hours to get to this isolated people group. And part of the 3 hours is 30 minutes of walking on a mountainside to get to these people.
Into the jungle.
That's the type of trip that this was, and that varied from day to day. So
what was the church like there? Was it a building or
outdoor,
outside? Yeah.
So Journey purchased a piece of property in that isolated village, and a foundation is poured.
Oh boy!
But they're waiting for walls and a roof, just like in Rampachuravaram, which is the story I'll tell right now.
Yeah, I do want to get back to that story.
Yeah. So I was just trying to draw a picture of the types of ministry we were doing from one day to the next. So on one of those days, we're going to try. Santos tells us, he says, look, we're going to travel to Rampachuravaram. And I'm probably not saying it correctly, but it's close enough.
Yeah.
So the city is, I say city loosely, it's a fairly large town, and the best way that I can describe it is if you think of Mandeville and Covington 25 years ago. Okay. It was like, it's up and coming. There are a lot of people here, but you know it's going to get bigger. Yeah. And as it gets bigger, it's expanding outward. So Santos, his uncle, and a few other people have the vision and the foresight to understand, like, no, they built a university here. Yeah. They built a hospital here. Yeah. This is already a fairly big town, and it's doing nothing but growing. Yeah. And there are a lot of influential people who are here because it's the other thing. It's like, it's beautiful there. Yeah. Never expected India to be as beautiful as it is, as far as the lush landscape and palm trees and mountains and that whole type of deal. Right. So anyway, there are a lot of influential people who live there in that community. And so Journey had given some money a few years back and was able to purchase some property there and get the foundation poured. And that's the next church that Santos wants to get built.
Will that be his hub church, or will he stay in where he's at now?
So it'll be more for I think that's where he and Angeli want to kind of relocate to,
I see, yeah.
which is about an hour and a half away from Gangavaram, which
Okay.
is where the training center is.
Yeah.
So he'll kind of travel back and forth.
So the training center will stay there.
Correct.
And this will become the mother church, so to speak.
I don't know if I would. I don't know that
Yeah.
language is transferable.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I think that they both serve. They'll kind of both be on equal par, just depending upon their locations.
Right.
So, but I do think that what he wants to do is to be able to eventually live there in Rampachuravaram.
Yeah.
But that's kind of years down the road type of deal.
So buying this land is where the miracle took place.
Yeah. And so he tells us we're on our way out there that day, and he's trying to prep us. Where are we going to see? We're going to go see this property, and we're going to pray for the property, and then we're going to go travel to this other church that's an hour away or whatnot. And when we're traveling out there, he says, yeah, the whole reason that this church was started, they were struggling trying to find the land, trying to purchase the land. And, it's one of those deals people ask, is it illegal to be a Christian there? And technically on paper, no, it's not illegal to be a Christian. However, so what's written way up here at the federal level, for lack of a better way to explain it, what's written up here in comparison to what takes place boots on the ground are completely different. So what happens is you've got individuals who are part of the caste system, and there's 6, 7, 8, I don't even know how many different layers of the caste system there are, but there are individuals in the caste system, and they may be from a lower tier and others from a higher tier, but guess what? They get saved, and when they get radically saved, they recognize, wait a minute, there's no Jew or Greek, rich or poor, caste system or not. Like the gospel,
one in Christ.
The gospel abolishes all of this.
Right.
So they immediately kind of toss all that stuff to the side.
Wow.
So you have people like Angeli, who comes from a higher caste system than Santos, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And Santos's family, they're 4th generation Christian.
Yeah.
Angeli's family, not quite that far along, but they're So anyway, that they cross that cultural barrier, if you will.
Yeah.
So you have people who are from different caste systems who get saved, they get married. Some people they actually share meals together. They do business together. All these things start taking place when they actually get saved. So while on paper it says, hey, you can be a Christian, in practice, the local governments are like, yeah, that's not good. We don't want you, because you become Christian. Well, then that abolishes the caste system.
Right.
When the caste system gets abolished, these people in authority lose power. Yeah. They lose a lot of control, which obviously they don't like. So on paper, yes, you could be Christian, but in practice, it's highly frowned upon. And even that's why you have people like those radical Hindu extremists who are burning churches down and whatnot. That's what's going on there.
Right.
So he tells us when we're going into this, hey, we were struggling trying to buy property, and we couldn't find the proper location, having trouble navigating some of the legal loopholes and whatnot. My uncle was there. And, essentially what happened was, if I remember the story correctly, there's a man who was a paraplegic in a wheelchair, and there's a woman. I don't know what their relationship is to the local government or not. I don't know where they fit in this hierarchy. All I know is she, I guess, heard that Santos and his uncle had been looking for land and coming into town and whatnot. Right. Went to them, said, hey, can you pray for my husband? I heard the Christian God still heals people. Can you pray for my husband? They prayed for this man, and he was radically healed to where he no longer needs a wheelchair.
So a man who was paralyzed got up and walked.
Yeah.
Wow.
And still walks to this day.
Come on, Jesus.
Yeah. So the wheelchair is given to somebody who needs it because he doesn't need it anymore.
Man.
He obviously became a Christian.
And that opened the door for the land?
That opened the door for the land. The woman became a Christian. That opened the door for them to purchase the land. It's like prime real estate for that up and coming community. Yeah. So Journey provided the funds. The government kind of opened the door, if you will, so that we could actually purchase the property. The foundation has been poured, and that's the video that we showed in church yesterday. The woman whose husband was healed was there. Hans and I got to meet her when we were in India. Right. So a lot of these stories you hear, you're like, oh, is that real? It's like, I saw the woman.
You were there.
Met the woman. Yeah, she was standing right next to us.
So that's the building that we're planning on building soon?
That's the one.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's the next one that Santos wants to build. And his idea here is that, listen, we could build a lot of these churches in these isolated villages for $5,000.
Yeah.
It's relatively inexpensive to plant a church in one of those isolated villages. In this up-and-coming city, it'll cost maybe 4 or 5 times that.
Yeah.
However, because of its location, by a university, close to a hospital, in a more influential area of town, it'll be a sending church.
Yeah.
It'll be one of those churches that has more funds, more people, and more influence that can then support some of the smaller churches. So that's kind of the idea.
So
there.
Santos's church that he's using now is complete. The first floor is complete.
Correct.
Yeah, and then they had the money for the training center.
Correct.
Is that right?
That's correct.
So did you guys use the training center?
We walked upstairs and kind of did a ceremony to cut the ribbon and
for like a
prayed
dedication?
over it. Yeah.
Where did you do the training sessions then?
Downstairs in the church itself.
So you're still there, but probably next time we go, it'll be.
I'd say within the next couple of months or so. He says he has the funds to finish that, and any funds that are raised now will go towards Rumpachuravaram.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that's so good. Yeah. That's
so,
exciting.
So, you see that stuff happen where people are literally healed and get up out of wheelchairs and you're a part of, prayer experiences and worship experiences where the Lord is just showing you pictures and visions and giving you words of knowledge to deliver to people, and you don't even speak the same language, but your hearts connect through the Spirit in the moment, and you're experiencing those things, and it is supernatural, and it is really hard to convey how special it is to experience that.
Yeah.
And if it's that special for Hans and myself, I know it's 100 times more special for the individuals there.
Yeah.
So we say, well, we're going there to encourage Santos and his family. Well, we encouraged every single church that we went to as well.
Sure.
Because with exception of Santos's church, his main church, he has 2 other ones. With exception to that main church in Gangavaram, every other church we went to was 20 people.
Yeah.
They're in isolated villages. They're in isolated pockets of the city surrounded by extremists.
Yeah.
When you have 20 people who are gathering together, who are threatened, whose lives are literally threatened.
Yeah.
And then you have Americans who are flying 14,000 plus kilometers in order to come say, hey, God set me free, and he saw me and he heard me, and he sees you and hears you too.
Yeah.
The same God that you are worshiping and praying to is the same God that set me free, and he's the same God that sent me here. Just to remind you, don't quit praying.
Yeah.
Don't quit serving. Don't quit believing.
Yes, indeed.
So it's like, for us, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so powerful to be a part of that. But I know it's even more so powerful for them to be... To feel like you're so forgotten. Yeah. You're so inconsequential in the kingdom. Yeah. To feel when they're taking up an offering, when you take an offering for 3 churches. Yeah. And it essentially comes to $37. Yeah. And we showed those photos, and you told part of that story yesterday, but that's a hard, it's hard.
Yeah, I agree. It's just one of those stories that just makes you lose, you just can't hardly process it. It's just such an emotional thing. We received our offering yesterday. We call it One Day to Reach the World, and we do it every year to help plant churches and do relief work and that kind of thing. And yesterday, the very first fruit of the offering that we put in, that $37 you brought back from that village. In fact, this is it right here. This is the actual money that the church, the 3 churches that you're going to tell the story about, collected, and these are the coins that the Journey kids put in. Worth less than a penny. Yeah. And they gave you this as an offering for you coming. The 30. Well, what?
Yeah. So the story is, I told you every church we went to, they wrap a prayer shawl around us at the conclusion of the service. So sometimes it was twice. When we walked in, they were to some of the more affluent churches that were able and weren't quite so hidden. Like I said, it's very odd to pull up for him to tell you pull up in a car and he says, hey, when we get out the car, don't stop and take photos. Don't meander around. We have to get inside the church as quickly. It's about 75-yard walk through a couple of alleyways.
Yeah.
We got to get in, and we want you to encourage the church, but don't raise your voices too loud.
Yeah.
And we don't want too many people to see you because Hans and myself stick out like a sore thumb. Right. We're going to draw unnecessary attention. Yeah. So it's, that's it's like, hey, don't let too many people see you. Get in and get out. Right. But there are other churches we would visit, and it was like, no, there was a procession of people waiting outside, throwing flowers and putting a lei on you. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so from one moment to the next, you experience such a wide range. So
every church gave you the flower welcome except for these 3 churches here.
So what would happen is we'd get into these churches, they give us the flower welcome, or at the very end of the service, if they didn't give you the flower welcome at the beginning, they do it at the end. So they put the lei on you, put the shawl on you, and do the whole deal at the end. Yeah. When we went to, that was in Angeles Village, where we took up that collection. And there were 2 other villages as well, as what I found out after the fact. You know, we're sitting there. This is a village that has been decimated by a flood. Mm-hmm. It looked like the after effects of Hurricane Katrina. Yeah. You know, except nobody ever came. Yeah. No one
picked up the debris or changed.
You could still see the mud, you know, and the water levels. You could still see, like, it's horrific. And people are living daily lives here still. Wow. So we travel here. It's just starting to get dark. We walk in, and I didn't even realize, you know, we're walking into, there's 20, 25 people there, and probably 20 of them are children. Mm-hmm. And so again, you're just listening to the Spirit. Right. Whatever you think you're going to do, you pretty much throw out the window.
And these kids are all orphans, right?
So what I was told was their fathers are either addicted, battling addiction and not working, or they're not in the picture at all. Yeah. And some of so Santos said all of the children are supported by Journey. They're fed by the church. Their education comes through the church. Wow. The only reason that their birthdays are celebrated is because of the church. So cakes and singing songs and that's all that stuff, that anything special that happens in their life is only happening because of the church.
You showed that picture yesterday morning at Journey, and the one you took of the church, all the 20 kids, and I know that Pastor Santos calls them the Journey
kids. Yeah, which is heart-wrenching. So you walk in there and you see these children, and he's saying, many of these children are orphans. Yeah. We're supporting them. We're taking care of them. Angeli teaches them and disciples them every week. We're teaching them church songs and this, that, and the other. Right. And then he tells you, we call them Journey kids. It's like,
it just puts a arrow through your heart.
So we're preaching and teaching there in that little small one room. And
what kind of building is it?
It's one room. So there was another. It looked like, I assume it was probably a house. Yeah. But it was dark. When we got there, the sun was going down. Couldn't really get a feel for what you.
Any electricity in the building?
There was, but it went off about 7 times. Oh wow! So we were there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours.
The structure was made of wood or metal?
It was, it was wood, but there was no glass for the windows. Yeah. So it was like a window is here. Yeah. But it's just like some wood scroll work. Yeah. And they would put a curtain up over that so the wind can kind of blow through the place. Right. And so we were like in a front.
One room about the size of a conference room or something like that?
Maybe about this big, maybe a little smaller. Probably a little smaller.
And it was packed with children and women.
Right. Yeah. So Hans and I are sitting on one end of the wall. So you would walk in where your bookshelf is. Yeah. And we would climb over children. Yeah. Just literally stepping over children. Yeah, right. And we sit right there. And then there was about 20 kids and 7 or so women, no men, all towards the back of the room there. Yeah. So we shared, I shared, Hans shared, and then when we finished, I noticed they're starting to kind of pass a collection plate around, and you kind of realize what's happening here. Yeah. Like I said, the electricity had went off 6 or 7 times, and the culture of honor there is so high. And that's what it all boils down to. It's like they couldn't get a prayer shawl. They couldn't get They couldn't get the garland. So, and there was 3 churches who couldn't do that. Yeah. So the 3 churches collectively took up an offering. And while we were in that last church, they were like taking up the final bits and pennies and mites, if you will.
They were giving coins like this one.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there and we're watching that happen, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do here? Like, I don't even know, like how, because I know I have to accept it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, how do I accept it on face value, but just give it back to the church as soon as I walk out the doors?
Yeah.
Because there's so many, like, I'm thinking culturally, like, even people who aren't Christian, like to see the white guy come in and then they're giving the guy the money. Like, I had so many thoughts going through my head. That was like,
the opposite of what you want to leave behind.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want them thinking they're giving the white guy money. I don't even want to take their money. Sure. And there's so many thoughts that are going through my head in that moment. But so when I did mention it to Santos, and his words are, no, Pastor, like, they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. Don't steal their blessing.
Yeah. And
when he said that, I was like, okay, no, he's 100% right.
Yeah.
This isn't about anything other. Like, I got to fight through my flesh. I got to fight through so many other feelings that I have right now, and just honor what the Lord wants to do. And the Lord wants to bless these people, and He wants to bless their sacrificial giving. And again, that's not a popular message here.
Yeah.
But it's biblical.
Luke 21.
It's biblical.
Yeah.
So, we accepted their offering, as hard as that was. And when Hans and I got back to the hotel that night, we tried to do everything above board. I said, hey, let's count this together so we're staying accountable here. So we counted it all out, and I did the math, and we were like, it's like $37 or something, And I'm like, what are we going to do here? I felt like this was so special. It was such a special moment. It was so hard to see so many broken children, like knowing these kids don't have anything, and they're putting it in my hand right now. It's like, am I just really going to take this and put this with the rest of the money and let it get filtered into, to me, it was like, it's way too special to just let that get mixed in with everything else.
Yeah.
So I told Hans, I was like, listen, I didn't want to make the executive decision, but I said, look, this is what I'm wrestling with right now. Yeah. We counted it all out. I said, we can either do this, just give it, we get back to church, we put it in the offering with everything else, or when we go into town tomorrow, I'm going to purchase a nice box. Yeah. We're going to put everything in the box.
I love the box.
We'll bring it to Pastor, and it's going to be a reminder of Luke 21. Yeah. That
absolutely,
that these gave out of their lack, and it'll be the first fruits offering for this offering that we're taking on the 30th, and that's where we're at. That's what that is right there, and so that when I told Hans what I'd like to do, he said, "No, Pastor, I think you're right. That's what we need to do with it." And Pastor, so many stories. Santos has texted me so many stories. Yeah. Since he picked up that offering. Yeah. One woman who was in the church who was waiting for a court. The judge kept putting stuff off year after year after year, was not getting an answer to some court judgment. And he texted me the other day. He said, hey, one of the women who was who was a part of that offering, the judge finally heard her case, and not only heard her case, but awarded her. It was after years. Awarded her. He didn't tell me how much money. He just said more than what she was even praying or asking, which lines up with what Hans preached the entire trip. Yeah, exceedingly. God did exceedingly and abundantly more than what she prayed for.
What a word, man.
She's praying and asking for X, and God did more. Yeah, and she was part of that sacrificial offering. Yeah. Yesterday he texted, I think. Angelique texted Hans.
I read that this morning.
Yeah.
I saw it.
So, a woman who was praying for a job, we laid hands on her and prayed for her. So many stories have come through.
She got the job yesterday, right? Yeah, I saw that. That's apparently God keeps his promises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's so many special stories going into those isolated villages, going into, sitting in front of orphans and widows, and sitting in front of broken people, and we walked into an isolated village. That one village we walked into that day, it took us 30 minutes to travel through the bush to get there, and there are people sitting there with Bibles. They're wearing stuff that you would expect to see from tribal people. They are tribal people, but they're carrying leather Bibles.
Oh, Jesus.
You know, so I'm going there to try and bring some encouragement to them. Word. And they are there already, like, no, we're already believers. It's like, but they're persecuted. And because they're persecuted because of the caste system and because of their faith in Christ, they can't go down to the nearest city and get the essential supplies they need. People won't do business with them. But they already have God's word. So here I show up to go encourage them. Yeah. How do I bring them? What do I bring them?
They can encourage you, probably.
So I did encourage them.
Yeah.
And they didn't. But it's one of those things is where, like, you can't have that thought out ahead of time.
Yeah.
You get there and you see them and you feel what the Spirit is saying. Yeah. And then you deliver the message the Lord puts on your heart in that moment. Right. And the only thing I could put on their heart in that moment is, hey, you know, you guys are hidden because you're valuable. Yeah. And while all the, you know, every month, it's I can't even believe how much Ministry Santos gets done with what we send him. Yeah. Because when I do the math, I'm like, it's like the fishes and loaves. Yeah. How do you do this? How do you support all these pastors?
He's multiplying it.
How do you send an offering to this village every month? Yeah. How do you buy those 2 water buffalo? Right. How do you do it? And I'm doing the math and I'm thinking of what we send him and I'm saying, I don't know how you do it all. The Lord is multiplying it all apparently because it's amazing.
Yeah, he's supporting 15 pastors on his staff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys did the training.
Right.
With those 15 pastors, but the picture had many more people than 15.
Yeah, we have about 50 people there.
Who was the other people that were there?
Other pastors in the community who are in kind of like a network with him.
I see.
So they may not be journey churches per se.
But he was helping train the other pastors too.
Yeah, come on out, be encouraged, come meet our missionaries.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and that is so good. Yeah. Any stories that you want to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave it at that. There are a lot of other stories. There really are a dozen other stories I could run through right now. Yeah. Some more encouraging, some are funny and are good for a laugh. Yeah. I think it's probably best to just end it and say, you know, God is good. Yeah. Hans was amazing on the trip. If I'm ever going on a mission trip anywhere, I want to go with Hans.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He's got a unique ability to bring everybody up a level. Yeah. So he brings the best out of the children he was around, the other pastors he was around. His message that he preached was, you know, it was amazing. Mm-hmm. His ability to connect cross-culturally with others. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he
wanted to be here today. He really wanted to come, but he has a real job, you know, or I shouldn't say a real job. He has another job. Yeah. You know, you and I have real jobs too. I'm sorry. That sounded
No, I get it.
Cutting. 100%. He has another job he had to go to where he tracks the currents of the ocean. Yeah. So he has other important things to do too. Yeah. But he did say, Pastor Al knows all my stories. So have him tell some of them. Anything about Hans you want to say? Anything? Said?
We had so I told you we had an idea of what we wanted to. We thought we had an idea of what we wanted to do ahead of time. It was like we were trying to plan it out, but when we realized like things ain't. We don't have a lot of peace with this. Yeah. And then after we preached that first day, we knew like, okay, it looks like this is what the Lord wants us to focus on. Yeah. So he preached one message the entire time, and I shared my testimony, various aspects of it, depending upon which village we went to and what I kind of sensed in the moment. But there was one village we went to where that didn't happen, meaning where Hans preached a different message. And it was something the Lord specifically spoke in that moment. Yeah. So we were traveling to this. It was an isolated village, and the backstory here is they were hostile to the gospel. Yeah. Didn't want any presence of the church around. This is going back probably 3 years ago or so. Yeah. And Santos, being Santos, the mighty man of God that he is, you know, even though they didn't want a church there, this is an isolated village of about 200 people. So they're isolated, but it's a significant group of people there, deserving of a church. They wouldn't accept a church. COVID hits. Santos, being Santos, continues to bring supplies to them. Yeah. Every month he's bringing rice.
Are those some of the pictures he posted on the Journey Facebook page?
During COVID?
Yeah. Yep. Oh man, those were just heart-wrenching. See him feeding all those people.
Yeah. So he's bringing rice,
Yeah.
he's bringing spices, he's bringing mats for people to lay on, he's bringing, just essential supplies for people who are not Christian, who don't eat, who not only are they not Christian, they don't even want a church.
Yeah, they're opposed to the gospel.
Right. We don't even want a church here.
Yeah.
But month after month, all through COVID, he continued to serve them. So this village of 200 who did not want any church in their village, I don't know what happened. I don't know how the whole politics of everything works. All I do know is they needed a new village leader. Yeah. They vote for a young guy. He looks 27, 28 or so. Yeah. Don't you know how God works? God saves this young man.
Oh, what?
So now the village leader is saved. Santos has been bringing supplies to the village for, for a year or two.
Yeah.
Santos becomes friends with this young man, starts discipling this young man. Then other people start getting saved in this village of 200, which opens the door. There was a building already from a church that was there generations ago. Mm-hmm. They remodeled that church. That's a Journey church now. Yeah. Hans and I got to go have lunch in there. It's beautifully painted. It's on an amazing piece of property. I'll show you a photo.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So there's a church there, but there's only about 6 people. Mm-hmm. So it's a village of 200. So we show up. Now Santos tells us on the ride there. He said, "Listen, these people have been very hostile towards Christianity. Not exactly sure how this is going to go. I don't really like." He was very hesitant. I don't know about this one. Like he's a man of faith. Yeah. But when we're driving there, he's like, "I don't know how this one's going to go." Not a whole lot of people full of faith here, Yeah. So when we got there, there was about 30 people sitting out, and the village leader, who is also Christian, said, "Oh no, this ain't enough people. Yeah. We got to get more people out here." He said, "You guys just wait a moment." Yeah. So he walks around the village, rounding people up. Wow. So we can't be called missionaries. Yeah. We have a scientist and a teacher here. Yeah. They're touring our country. Yeah. They're here in our village. Yeah. Let's go say hi to them. Yeah. Basically is the premise. So so we got about 75 people out there now, 65, 75 people who are sitting.
Oh my.
And it's like,
that's almost half the village came out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So then it's like, okay, we got a scientist, and everybody claps. Yeah. And a teacher, and everybody claps. Would you come up and speak? Now I'm like, okay, Lord.
Oh boy.
How are we gonna do this one?
What am I gonna say, Jesus?
Yeah. So I just started to say, I just started to recognize the elders. I could see all the older men were sitting up. You just kind of pick up on things. Sure. So I started thanking them personally. Hey, thank you for the village is so beautiful. Yeah. The mountain. Just started building their heads up. Yeah. You guys are so gracious to allow us in here. We're so thankful. India is so beautiful. We can't believe it. I said, man, I'm from a small place just like this. Mm-hmm. It's called St. Bernard. Yeah. And man, it was a small fishing community, and a lot of it, we knew one another and whatnot. Yeah. And I dealt with a lot of addiction growing up, and to deal with the addiction that I dealt with, but to be here in India, in this beautiful village today, man, it's just the grace of God. And I don't know what you guys believe, but I believe in a God named Jesus, and he led me here, and blah, blah, blah. Nice. So that's kind of how I led into it all. Yeah. And then Hans gets up, and I'm thinking he's got a dynamite message, but he gets up and he preached through the book of Jonah, chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4, all off the top of his head, all spirit-led, in an illustrated way. Meaning we grabbed another pastor, we picked him up, I'm holding his leg in his arm. Yeah, Hans is holding him, we're shaking him, and people in the people in the crowd are sitting there, and we're acting like we're going to throw this man on him. Yeah. So, and this is all, Hans. Yeah. This is all him improvising. Grab him, Pastor Al. We grab him. So, and he's a dynamic storyteller, a man who hears the Spirit very clearly. And we presented the gospel in such a clear way. At one point, we had one of the pastors there. We were demonstrating Jesus on the cross. So I'm holding the pastor's hands, and Pastor Hans is holding the other guy's hand, and the pastor's standing there. So at one moment, we were tossing this guy over, and 20 minutes later, we've got him nailed up on a cross. And again, it's just Hans being Hans, taking these people through the story of the gospel as illustrated through Jonah. And it was amazing, and so at the end of that message, you've got 30 people or so who come forward and say, can you lay hands on me? Can you pray for me?
Wow.
I need to be set free. Just like you were trapped in addiction, I'm trapped in addiction, or my husband's in addiction, or whatever the case. And, hey, I want to know more about X, Y, Z. Would you pray for me? I need a job. I need this. I need that. So again, when we left that village, so we brought a lot of rice and we brought a lot of gifts to the people as well. When we left that village, all Pastor Santos could say was, wow, wow, wow. I can't even believe what just happened.
Like, a sovereign move of
it was
the Spirit.
like he was like, I told you on the ride out there, he was like, I don't really know, God. Like, he's a mighty man of faith, but at the same time, he was like, this is going to be a hard one here. Wow. This is a hard nut to crack.
And the Lord did just the opposite.
Oh, my gosh. It was so good. It was so good.
Wow, man, those are some great stories,
yeah.
man.
And there's 100 more.
Some great stories. Maybe we can have some pictures, too, some of the stuff that we showed yesterday.
Yeah.
It'd be great for people to see. Man, I have been so inspired by all the stories I've heard you and Hans tell, and the pictures that Santos has been sending, and the testimonies that Anjali's sending. It's just incredible what God is doing there, and we're just so fortunate to be a part of it. And I know yesterday was our One Day to Reach the World offering. We don't know even what the total is yet. The count team is actually counting it as we record this, so we'll know at the end of the day. So we're excited because we can help plant some more churches in India, Journey India. We're also going to send a team to Argentina. They'll be leaving a week from now. So Pastor Ken, Pastor Tanya, Pastor Andrew, and 6 other Journey people are going to Argentina to serve Pastor Luis as he plants a new church in Tucumán, Argentina. So we want to be part of that. And of course, Axaria and Danielle were here a few Sundays ago, and we want to put a roof on their building in Valencia, Venezuela. And man, just what a privilege it is to be able to partner with church planners and missionaries and apostles, modern day apostles who are just taking the gospel to people who've never heard, those who don't know. And Santos is doing that. He's preaching the gospel to those who've never heard, those who don't know. So is Luis. So is Axaria and Danielle. And what a privilege it is. And then our friend Kirk and Amy Priest, they are in Slovakia planning a church among the Romani. We're excited about what they're doing. And around the world. And, the local church is the only hope of the world. And I'm just so excited that Journey is part of what God's doing on the planet. I just want to tell you from me and Miss Rachel and from Journey Fellowship Church how much we appreciate you and Pastor Hans. Thank you for going. Thank you for bringing the word of encouragement to Santos and bringing the good reports back. And we just appreciate you and Pastor Jen, who sacrificed 2 weeks of your life to make that happen, and we're grateful for that. And thanks for helping us to build some new churches in India. So
well, it's my pleasure. As we said when we kind of kicked things off, the traveling is a challenge, and jet lag, and even coming back. All of it caught up with me. I had about 2 days of jet lag when I landed there, but coming back, it was probably a good 6 or 7 days where
so you were still rattled, huh?
Just cloudy and just couldn't feel normal again. But with all of the challenges and struggles that come with, I missed homecoming. My child Alvin went to his first homecoming, and I was out of the country.
It's a big deal.
So there were different things, like different events going on that I wasn't a part of here at home. That you kind of get sad, and I wish I was there for that.
I know.
But the reality is, for the gospel to continue to go forth, for God's people to continue to be encouraged, for those little pockets. I think 8 or 9 different churches, 6 or 7 of them, 20 to 25 people, to recognize, like, hey, some Americans came. Like, this is a day that goes down in their history books. They took a photo with us, and it's going to be on the wall in their church, and they're going to see it and pray every Sunday and thank God that God didn't forget about them, that God sees them, God hears them, because we went and shared our testimony.
So thanks on behalf of Journey to Jen and to your kids for the sacrifice you guys made for the kingdom.
May Jesus get all the glory.
For the king and the lost man. May the king receive the reward of his suffering.
Amen.
So God is so good.
Yeah, he is.
All right, well, we're going to wrap it up. We can cry later. God is so good. I can't wait to get the report next Sunday on what our missions offering was yesterday. You know, it's going to be a great day to celebrate. And if you want to give, if you're watching online and the Holy Spirit has spoken to you through our stories, or you just want to be part of what we're doing in India or in Argentina or Venezuela or in Slovakia, you can still give. It's not too late. You can give at jf.church. Just follow the online giving. There you'll see the button to click, or you can give from the Journey app. If you don't have the app, I encourage you to download the Journey Fellowship Church app. Go to your app store, type in Journey Fellowship Church. You'll see our app. It's free. It's packed with resources and past sermons and ways to get connected, but you can also give right from the app. So if you want to be part of this, you can send through jf.church or through the Journey app. Thanks for joining us today, Pastor Alvin. Inspired by the stories. Love what God did. Appreciate all the sacrifice. And last thing I want to ask you, do you think you'll go back soon, or what's the plan for the next?
Yeah, God willing, I'll go back.
Yeah.
Everybody I know who's ever been to India said, nope, I've been once. I have no desire to go back.
Yeah.
I had a different trip than everybody else.
Good.
Santos is an amazing host.
Yeah.
He's doing some great work there.
Yeah.
I would gladly take a few people back next year or the year after, whenever the Lord allows.
Let's prayerfully consider a return trip in the next year or 18 months to go back, and maybe a small contingent with you. Now that you've been there, you can be a seasoned
we would definitely
leader.
do some things a little bit different. But I think it would be great to have a few other people experience
What
that.
would be the size trip you'd want to bring with you? How many people?
4 people.
Yeah,
4 people.
Maybe 5 total, counting you. Yeah. Well, let's pray. Ask the Holy Spirit to guide us. If you're part of Journey, or if you're interested in missions and you want to connect with us, we'll be talking more about that. And of course, we'll give a report, especially when we start building the building in the new, on the new campus near the university. Anyway, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for watching us. This has been Stories I Didn't Tell Last Sunday. It's our podcast here. We release about one a week or so, depending on what's going on. But we love to just tell the stories, and sometimes we just take our time. Sunday morning, we don't have time to tell the whole story. This has been an hour-long story that we couldn't have told on a Sunday, but this gives us an opportunity to go in detail. And I hope you've enjoyed it. There's a lot of past stories if you want to go back and watch some of the other stories I didn't tell last Sunday. You can also read my blog. It's weekly. Publish every weekend, usually Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. I put a new blog up, but you can also follow along. You can watch past messages on the app if you would like to hear what we're preaching, or follow a current series, or even look back to some of the old series that we did. They're all posted on the app. So thanks for joining us today. So I'm Doug McAllister for Journey Fellowship Church, and you've been watching Stories I Didn't Tell Last Sunday.